welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
And boy, oh boy, Season 3 of Wrestling at Random. We have all of the wrestling on the internet dumped into the randomizer. We fire it up. And so many times on this podcast, we've reviewed shows where it's like, wow, that was awesome. Would have never watched it, but thank God the randomizer chose this show because I would have never watched it. Glad I did. I learned I liked something new, or I had a great time watching it. Expectations were exceeded. And then the opposite can also happen. And here we are.
The randomizer giveth and the randomizer taketh away, as you always like to say. I feel like we also, as we get into this podcast, we missed out on an alternate name for the randomizer as the Taboo Toss-Up.
Yeah. Our the show we're gonna watch is Taboo Tuesday from 2004. Now, this
not to be confused with Tuesday Night in Texas from 1991, was it?
That is correct. Yes,
which we have reviewed. Is that on the Patreon feed, I believe? On the bonus content feed?
It is
all the different places you can access that bonus content.
It's waiting for you in the bonus content. Go subscribe there, and you can hear our review of this Tuesday in Texas.
And you can decide for yourself, after hearing our reviews anyway, which Tuesday night WWF/E pay-per-view was better.
Oh, man, this show. So
this show could have used some Skinner. Is what it could have used.
So much is wrong with this show, but let's dive into October 18th, 2004. So this was the first pay-per-view held on a Tuesday since the aforementioned This Tuesday in Texas, which we reviewed in the bonus content.
That one I did order as a 10-year-old at the time and watch live. This one, Taboo Tuesday, I did not order. I did not watch, as I was telling you just before we pushed record for this podcast, that at some point, it's a little foggy, but some point early in 2004, or at least earlier than this in 2004, was when I had completely given up on the WWF product, on ordering pay-per-views, WWE, I guess I should say at this time. I tried for a couple years post WCW. I hung on for a good 3 years, but earlier in 2004 was when I had finally signed off. So I have not yet seen this show. I'm aware of it, obviously, but had not seen it.
Yeah, so the theme of this pay-per-view is that the fans on the internet, or as Coachman calls it, the worldwide internet.
I really was disappointed that we didn't get any information superhighway mentioned. It's also disappointing that Shawn Michaels, who had a presence on this show, wasn't backstage on AOL, like whatever In Your House show that was that we chronicled, where it looked like he had never seen a keyboard or the internet before.
I feel like was that Beware of Dog? Was that the Beware of Dog show, or was that?
It could have been. It was one of those.
So it's one of those In Your Houses. Go back and listen to all of them in the back catalog of this podcast. Most of those are free. So the theme is the fans will choose potentially the opponent, the stipulation, the weapon. A lot of these, a lot of them are going to be, and this was a shoot. Like the fans were going to vote, and they were going to go with whatever the fans chose.
That was going to be my question. Was this going to be like a Halloween Havoc 92 where spin the wheel, make the deal led to, of all things, a coal miner's glove match between Sting and Jake the Snake Roberts? Were we potentially in for disappointment here? All of other questions as well, as far as how the votes were tabulated and where does the crowd, the in-arena crowd vote fit in?
Yeah, so all of the votes that were done online was going to be a total coal miner's glove potential situation. So I'll get into it in a little bit, but the goal was to make the outcomes as preordained as possible. So have the angles on the show leading up. Remember, this was a Tuesday pay-per-view, so Raw the night before was the go home. and it was, let's set up the angles to push the fans to vote in a certain direction. And they
also,
pretty much did throughout the show.
Let's give them one, a really good option, and two options that we know they're not going to be as into. And maybe not good option, but one that we know they'll want, and two that we're pretty darn sure they won't want.
So the WWE superstar destinies are in your hands, the video package tells us.
The ultimate fan participation experience. And at some point during this opening video where they talk about the fans making the matches, I remember, my memory is jogged, that there's a storyline about someone losing their baby, because that makes for good sports entertainment.
It makes up for a good chunk of this show, unfortunately.
This show has, talk about, they leaned in on the taboo side pretty hard. There's some weird stuff going on here on this professional wrestling program.
This is a Raw branded pay-per-view.
Yes. Well, and it's Raw presents WWE Taboo Tuesday. So no Stacker 2, no Stridex pads. The only sponsor they could get was themselves here. What I note immediately when we go in arena is that, man, this building looks small. The production looks sparse. This almost looks more like a house show with a bit more of a trumped up stage than it does look like an actual pay-per-view. It's just weird. They didn't go to the usual lengths to try to make the arena not seem as small as it is, try to hide a few empty seats here and there. Like this felt very slapdash, kind of like that in your house where the power outage happened and then they did a pay-per-view for they redid the show basically in what was originally going to be a house show, and didn't really do a whole lot with the production to make it better than it would have been.
This is not a small building. This is the Bradley Center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Which makes it even weirder. Like,
I know you've been there for Admirals games.
I've been there for Admirals games. I've been there for concerts. It's now just a distant memory, the building that is. But yeah, it's not tiny. I mean, it's a made for basketball arena, so it's not as big as a multi-use hockey / basketball arena, but it still holds a good, 15,000. But it's just weird the way they shot it. It looks small.
Well, there's a reason for that, and I'm glad you asked, because the paid attendance for this pay-per-view event in the Bradley Center, 3,500 paid attendance.
Oh my God. So did they curtain it off? Did they only use half the building?
Oh yeah, this show did not sell well for a show where the fans were theoretically picking the main event.
Well, they were all at home on the World Wide Web, the information superhighway, making their votes. No smartphones at that point. I don't know if the BlackBerry could get the job done, but yeah, this it has big Clash of the Champions in the Superdome in 1989 vibes, but no Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat on the card.
There were tickets available in every price range, even ringside, the day of the show.
Wow.
The night before at the Raw, which was in Chicago, they were handing out coupons for $10 tickets for people who wanted to attend the pay-per-view in Milwaukee.
Deep cut. Did they have Chicago Blackhawks players with business cards handing out the tickets? A bit of a crossover there between fandoms. It was around the same time.
It was.
If you were walking around the city of Chicago, Patrick Sharp might have just handed you a business card that was good for 4 free tickets.
By only opening up the voting for a 1-day period. So this wasn't like this voting was open for weeks. It was open for 1 day. Wow. Starting during the Raw show the night before. Most of the voting results were preordained based on comments and actions on that Raw show.
So was it a 1-day build as far as
yes.
Did people know what the matches were going to be before?
They knew what the options were.
No, but I mean the matches themselves as far as the competitors.
They didn't know what yeah, they didn't know. They knew who that you were going to vote for, either Benoit, Edge, or Michaels to take on Triple H, but they didn't know who was going to obviously.
No, what I'm asking is, was Monday the first time that people knew who the competitors in the matches were going to be, or the
No.
options?
They were building
Okay.
up the options for weeks, but didn't
Oh,
open up
okay.
the voting until during the Raw show.
Weird. This is, again, we've talked about before, these different sort of experiments that WWE and Vince McMahon did with pay-per-view, whether that be the in your house with the cut rate and the 2-hour duration, or the Tuesday night in Texas experimenting with the Tuesday night pay-per-view, or this year going back to a Tuesday night pay-per-view and doing the fan interactive voting. I guess you can decide for yourself by the end of this podcast if this idea worked out better than those did.
Well, I'll tell you, it was obviously a failure at the gate, right?
Yes.
3,500.
Yeah.
Was it a failure on pay-per-view, Adam? Well, it was the least purchased pay-per-view of all of 2004. So yes,
Wow.
This was also a colossal failure on pay-per-view as well. But they would not be deterred. They would run it back for another Taboo Tuesday in 05. They would.
I do like, though, that they took the fact that this did not draw, the fact that it did not draw at the gate or on pay-per-view. They took this, I guess, as an indication that they never should listen to their fans again for the next 17 years.
Yes, they took all the wrong lessons from this.
Is this the day? And granted, the cracks had already formed considerably. You listen to other podcasts here, people talk about the invasion angle and how much of a disaster that was. But man, yeah, this might be another one of those dividing lines as well.
We're told there's over 4 million votes cast and still counting. There's still time to vote, and we get a shot of the stage, and the Titantron is made to look like a big computer monitor, and the stage is a computer keyboard, and it has this weird lighting rig in the middle of the stage.
Yeah, I do not understand in any way, shape, or form what they were going for with the set, other than the keyboard, which you'll get to. But other than that, like, what?
What is that like? Everyone had to come out and walk around this lighting rig. It looked so weird.
Yeah, I don't know if it was to divide like a face and heel entrance by just this one little metal truss. Like, it was very strange. It looked like somebody put it in the wrong spot. Somebody
Totally
oriented it wrong, and then by the time they realized it was too late, and they just went with it.
7 Raw divas come out they'll be participating in a battle royal later where fans pick the outfits: nurses, French maids, or schoolgirls, and the live audience chooses schoolgirls. Let's find out, Coachman says, what the worldwide internet audience chose, and they also chose schoolgirls for 53% of the vote.
Let's also go back to Coach's his control center that he's at.
That's right.
He is on the opposite side of the stage from the announcers, who are Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross. And I love how they make this. It's the control center. And how do you know that it's the control center? Because there's randomly just a bunch of people with computers around him
at desks and tables. Yeah,
at desks.
So
well, so there's that. And then when these 7 women are brought out, the stage, the most, I guess, identifiable aspect of the stage is that because it's Taboo Tuesday and it's the internet, it's a giant keyboard.
Yes.
This felt like a computer version of the Tom Hanks movie Big, where I was just, in my head, it was just wherever they were standing, that was the button that was being pushed on the keyboard. I don't know. This didn't work.
Nobody was happier about these results than Jerry the King Lawler. We will have lots to say about Jerry Lawler as this show goes on.
Oh my God. Yeah. And it's Jerry Lawler, the coach. He says it's revolutionary. And then he says that he's dressed to compete if he has to. So they bring these 8 women, the divas or these 7 women, the divas as they used to refer to women in the WWE. They bring them out. They give the options, they do the vote, and then that's it. They just go to the back, and we're going to a different match to start. And boy, oh boy, this is another setup. The first match, it's for the Intercontinental title. And what I note here, and it's a trend throughout the show, this must have been a time period where Vince McMahon didn't want any of his wrestlers to be from Canada except for La
Yes,
Resistance.
I did make a
Because
note of that.
Chris
No baby
Jericho-
faces. No baby faces could
Yeah.
be from Canada. Only the heels could be from
Chris
Canada.
Jericho comes out and he is billed as, direct quote, born in Manhasset, New York.
Yes, born in Manhattan, New York. And yeah,
Manhasset, they said.
and I immediately noted that this was the time where Vince said baby faces couldn't be from Canada. We would see that again later.
God, these just weird,
so
pointless quirks that would just come and go. And 1 week it would be, 1 week it wouldn't be. But the week that it was the most important thing in the company to make sure that you didn't have baby faces be from Canada. So he gets introduced. We then learn that there are 15 possible opponents. And we go backstage, and these 15 men are in the smallest room you can imagine 15 men safely being in. And there's a camera, and we run down each of these guys. Camera focuses on one guy, moves an inch to the right, focuses on the next guy, moves an inch to the right, next guy. And these guys, we've got, among others, Maven, a shockingly hairy Chuck Palumbo. It was as if A-Train started working out. We have Steven Richards, Rosie, Tajiri, and a guy who I completely forgotten even existed, even though he had been in WWF, he had been in TNA. He's a former IWGP Tag Team Champion, Tyson Tomko.
That's right.
There's a lot of other guys here as well. There's Batista, there's Shelton Benjamin,
Christian and the Hurricane, and Rodney Mack, who I also forgot was a guy.
Yeah, exactly. Another one of those guys that I think had been around OVW forever and then finally got brought in.
So Val Venus was attacked by Kane on Raw, so he was out of this match, so you could vote for Coach in his place. So they run down the voting, and Shelton Benjamin gets 37% of the vote.
Well, first, before he gets 37% of the vote, as we run down 15 guys individually, and the crowd reacts to each of them. Coach, after all these guys are introduced, he says, it's fairly unanimous. Shelton Benjamin is the favorite. And I did not get that at all from the crowd reaction. Like, people cheered for him, but I didn't get people cheering for him more than the Hurricane or, any number of these guys. Like, he got an even reaction, I feel like.
So Shelton Benjamin challenging Chris Jericho. They start
Shelton
out.
Benjamin's music ain't no stopping me now challenging Chris Jericho.
That's right.
One of the few unique good entrance themes that holds up from 2004, from this era of WWE. It's like the only song that doesn't sound like either the WWE's favorite band, Limp Bizkit, or Nickelback, or a cover band of either performed them. It actually sounds like wrestling music. It's good stuff.
After trading some arm ringers, Jericho goes to work. Benjamin sent off the ropes. He holds on. Jericho charges in and gets backdropped over the top rope to the floor. Baseball slide kick by Benjamin. And they go back inside the ring where Benjamin goes to work in the corner, whips Jericho to the other corner, but gets caught by a boot charging in. Enziguri by Jericho. We get a 2 count. Good, fun action to start the match.
Yeah, no, this is solid professional wrestling between two very good wrestlers. Jericho obviously established. Shelton Benjamin, like, they keep going on about how young he is. And I'm like, wasn't he in OVW forever before they finally brought him up? Like, I seem to recall him being around for a while. But anyway, I think that then they say that he's been in WWE for 2 years at some point during this match. Apparently, he had just recently almost beat Triple H.
Yeah, he was
with the story that Triple H had taken him lightly. And Lawler is saying, and Jim Ross is saying that hopefully Chris Jericho doesn't take him lightly here as well. We should note that this is a babyface versus babyface match, which means kind of tepid reactions. The crowd is into both, but they can't decide who they want to see win.
A suplex, and we get the Jericho, come on, baby, 1 foot on the chest pin attempt, which we always love.
Yes, and it took a while, if I recall, for that to migrate over as part of his act from WCW to WWF/WWE. He didn't do that right away, but yes, very happy to see that here.
Drop kick by Benjamin misses as Jericho puts on the brakes, holding onto the ropes. Backbreaker by Jericho, and he's holding him across the knee. We get a sunset flip by Benjamin, gets a 2 count, but
Thankfully
Jericho...
not off the second or top rope.
No, just a regular classic sunset flip. Jericho right back up and hits a stiff clothesline. Jericho goes to the top. He gets caught. Benjamin hits a top rope superplex. Backdrop by Benjamin. He tries a kick. Jericho catches the leg. And then jumping with his other leg, he kicks Jericho, kind of like does a leg whip here. And it's one of the very impressive, cool moves that Shelton Benjamin does.
Yes, the tail whip, which would go on to be his finisher later on, which I always thought was weird. It's a very cool move. Kind of strange for a finisher. I also just remembered, it's not like this is the super distant past, but the run that Shelton X Benjamin had in Suzuki-gun.
That's
in
right.
Japan. Shelton X Benjamin.
Jericho hits a bulldog, misses the lion salt.
You know what? Who didn't miss something, though? The announcers here, as they say for the first of many, 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 many times tonight, the fans have the ultimate power.
Benjamin goes to the top, hits a clothesline, gets a 2 count. Benjamin misses a stinger splash in the corner. Jericho tries the walls of Jericho, but Benjamin with a small package for a near fall.
Yeah, great near fall here. Kind of the first thing that got Jim Ross going on commentary as well, and the crowd bought into it. Jericho, though, hits a running clothesline and hits a huge lion salt, only to Jericho firmly in control.
Jericho starts to get frustrated after that kick out of the lion salt. He starts laying in chops in the corner. Benjamin sends him into the corner, but Jericho leaps to the second turnbuckle, comes off, and gets caught in a T-bone suplex. Benjamin with the pin. He got the 3. Like, wow. New Intercontinental Champion, Shelton Benjamin.
Yeah, I can't say that I expected it coming in, but it actually does make sense. If you're trying to establish that things can happen here on this show and that the fans' voice matters and they have a say in how things go, well, they just voted this dude in and he beats Chris Jericho to win the Intercontinental title. So you take out that weird opening and to the show, not to the match. And the show's actually off to a good in-ring start. This was nothing groundbreaking, but this is a solid professional wrestling match to open a pay-per-view. I will say that it's accurate to call this a T-bone suplex and not a T-bone Tazplex.
Correct.
Because the neck of Chris Jericho is much safer here than it would be if Taz was delivering the suplex.
So Jericho gets back in the ring, takes the belt from Shelton Benjamin, but then puts it across Benjamin's shoulder, giving him the seal of approval.
It's so weird to see Jericho here doing that because obviously as a heel, he wouldn't do that. And also for the majority of time as a babyface, he was a guy that really pretty much acted heelish, but the crowd liked him. Like, he was not Mr. Sportsmanship as a face. He was usually still making fun of people and doing stuff. So this was, it was unexpected, but a good way to start the show. Yeah,
Jericho had no idea until he got into the ring that A, his opponent would be Shelton Benjamin, and B, that he'd be dropping the title.
Wow.
Vince McMahon made that call and told the referee at the start of the match.
So it would have depended on, like, let's say if Rosie had gotten 58% of the vote, he probably wouldn't have beaten Chris Jericho.
Nope. So they made the call when both guys got into the ring, and they ended up calling the entire match in the ring because they had no time to work it out beforehand. So
that's
totally
impressive.
Fine. Very good match.
Yeah, you'd think that if these guys knew they were going to be wrestling each other, it would have been even better. But for not knowing that they were going to be wrestling each other until the moment pretty much the match started, and not knowing the finish, because if Jericho didn't know he was going to be dropping the title, that's a pretty impressive match with those circumstances factored in.
Edge, Chris Benoit, and Shawn Michaels. The polls are still open to determine who will face Triple H later for the World Heavyweight title.
You're not telling the people the most important part of this. Our guy, Todd Phillips Grisham.
That's right.
I never remember which one he is. Is it Todd Grisham? Is that who this guy is?
I think it is.
Getting him mixed up with Tom Phillips. No, this is Todd Grisham.
Todd
the way
Grisham.
I always remember him is he's the guy that did the horrible job calling the Liger match on the Benoit DVD.
100%, and he was one of the worst play-by-play duos on WWE's ECW.
Josh Matthews, right?
Matthews.
They hated each other. You've never heard.
It was horrendous.
It was Just like imagine if Jeremy and I hated each other doing this podcast. That's what that would be like.
And so, yeah, again, those reviews are in the back catalog as well. And then you can go in the back catalog, listen to our Royal Rumble review from 2003, where we go into great detail about our struggles in having to watch Chris Benoit match and deal with Chris Benoit. We're not going to retread that here for our listeners. Go back to that podcast and listen to that, and we go into great detail about our feelings on Chris Benoit.
Rest assured, as we talk about everything here in this or in the match that Benoit is in later, it's not any more comfortable watching the matches now than it was a season or two ago when we first got Chris Benoit matches on here after neither of us really had watched any of his stuff since he murdered his family. So yeah, we'll leave that to the back catalog if you want to hear more of our thoughts on that.
Edge says he won a triple threat, so he deserves the title shot. Benoit says if you're sick of Triple H and Evolution on Raw, then vote for him.
This promo was weird, by the way. Benoit doing scripted promos, never good.
No. Michaels then gives his word that he's injured with a torn meniscus, but if you vote for him, he'll leave it all in the ring for the fans.
Yeah, he flat out says that he's not faking an injury. The thing that I noticed, just it comes off so lame and almost pathetic to see these guys standing next to each other in the back like a bunch of geeks, begging the fans to vote them in for a title shot. Like, there's so many things to me, just presentation and psychologically or visually, that were wrong with doing a show like this. And this is one of the main things. Like, none of these guys came off looking like the stars that they were, standing back here together, making their 30-second memorized elevator pitch for why the fans should vote for them.
And then they announced the winners of the vote. And Benoit got 28%, Edge with 33%, and Shawn Michaels wins with 39% of the vote.
Well, also, when he asked the live audience, it sure as hell sounded to me like the live audience wanted Benoit more than Michaels, or at least as much.
It was close,
Coach was like, overwhelmingly, it's Shawn Michaels. And again, this is the other thing I want to mention. We get no explanation of what the meaning or the weight of the fan, the in-arena fan cheering is. Like, they
nothing.
go to
it's nothing.
and say, well, I know that's clear, but it's they act like it has something to do with what people are about to see. It's so weird. Like, why are you even asking the fans if they don't?
Oh, Adam, because they had time to kill.
Oh, they did. We've talked before about episodes of TV, particularly, or pay-per-views, but a lot of times episodes of wrestling TV where it's like, man, they fit in 2 hours of story in a 90-minute or 1 hour bag. Here, they fit an hour and a half of show in a 3 hour bag.
So, the plan was for Michaels to get the match with Triple H. But it was going to be legit when it came to the voting, and they believed in a fair vote, that Chris Benoit could win, but that Edge had no chance. So they booked a three-way, putting Edge, the total heel, over the last few weeks, over Benoit, to favor Michaels. Instead, Edge nearly won here. So... yeah. Michaels ended up with 39% to 33% for Edge. Michaels, however, legit tore his meniscus in his left knee in the match the night before in Chicago.
That was going to be my question. We'll get to it in much more detail later on, because I was going to say, and I had it in my notes, that, my God, Shawn Michaels versus Triple H, that was the most realistic selling of a knee injury I've ever seen from a wrestler in my life. There's a reason he had a torn MCL, apparently.
He did. In his left knee, he got it the night before in Chicago. The doctors recommended surgery, which he
recommended wrestling for the world title.
And yes, he ended up getting surgery later that week. He knew going in that this would be his last match, probably for a couple of months. So now we move to the Fulfill Your Fantasy Battle Royal for the WWE Women's Championship.
Well, before we do, though, there's an important loose end to tie up here. The fact that Shawn Michaels won the fan vote, that means that Chris Benoit and Edge will team this same evening at Taboo Tuesday to challenge for the tag team championships. Also, how weird and awkward was it when Shawn wins the vote, and then he and Benoit are just awkwardly palling around while Edge steams and leaves? Like, it looked as though these two men had never interacted before in their lives, and here they're having to act like best buddies. It's like one of those soap opera shots where like the camera just lingers for 10 seconds on everyone just standing in the same place before it fades to black. This was not particularly good.
Your champion is Trish Stratus. The rest of the women are Jazz, Nydia, Gail Kim, Molly Holly, Victoria, and Stacy Keibler.
Gail Kim is introduced as just being from Korea.
Either Korea. Any Korea.
A lot of thought here put into so many things here on this show. This battle royal will be
first of all, Keibler's theme song is a Kid Rock cover of ZZ Top's song Legs. This is horrible. Ugh.
Yeah, there's not a lot about any of this that's very good. The rules are the winner of the battle royal is obviously the last person standing in the ring, the last diva standing in the ring, as they say. And you can eliminate your opponents by, all you have to do is get them out to the floor. It could be over the top. It could be between the second and third. It could be between the first and second. It could be under the first rope. Whatever way you do it, you just got to get them out to the floor and both feet touch. And just, man, yeah, just imagine the action we're about to see here, given what this division was at this time, what WWE was at this time when it comes to women, and just what battle royals are in general. They're usually not good.
No, so this had all the makings of horrible. Trish was just hanging out in the corner, letting everyone eliminate each other. Molly did a handspring elbow. It was the only move that I saw in the match.
Pretty close. The best part about this match was Jim Ross trying to call this like a real match. I get such perverse enjoyment out of when Jim Ross is an announcer in the WWE in this time period, is put into the position of having to call ridiculous things like a wrestling match. We talked about it a little bit on that SummerSlam 96 when there were a few matches where I think it was during that four-way tag title match where like he's reading off stats about Zip like Chris supposed to care, but this was next level from that.
So it comes down to Molly and Trish. Molly celebrating eliminating Stacy, which allowed Trish to sneak up from behind, dump her over the top rope. Trish wins, still women's champion.
Yeah, this was just, it was exactly what you'd think it would be if you hear us describe this. There was nothing to this. It was WWE women in 2004 doing WWE 2004 things.
Yes, fulfilling Jerry Lawler's fantasy.
Yes, this was personally booked for him. And if someone told me he had a network of 4 million computers set up to ensure that this was the attire that was chosen, 100% believe that.
That's right. He had this whole setup just for this voting, and now he's flipped it over and does Bitcoin mining.
Yes.
And so it's a win-win for Jerry Lawler.
Yes, I feel like he had paid off everyone on the other side of the stage in the control center. And with the amount of time they were spending on the computers, they might have actually created blockchain and cryptocurrency during that time period. It might be a scoop for someone to find.
World Tag Team Champions La Resistance. This version being Sylvain Grenier and Robert Conway.
Yeah, my notes are funny because I write, now we are backstage with La Resistance, Sylvain Grenier and Rene Dupree.
Yep.
And then it dawns on me as this
Rob
promo
Conway.
goes on that, oh wait, neither of these men are in fact Rene Dupree.
No, Rob Conway, longtime OVW guy.
The longest time OVW guy, an honorary Basham brother.
Yeah, he ended up
in terms of time
getting
served.
the spot, and he was totally fine wrestler, totally capable.
Yeah, I'll have thoughts when we get to that match.
So they're going to be wrestling Edge and Benoit later, and Edge says under protest.
Yes, these when it comes to mid-card tag teams waving the Quebec flag, These two men are no fabulous Rougeau brothers.
No, but Edge, to his credit, being angry about this whole voting situation, great job. He did a great job on all of his promos, being very mad.
Yeah, I would agree. Edge is, for my money, he's one of, if not the best guys at delivering WWE scripted promos.
Sure.
He takes it like as close as you can get to the line of overacting, but there's something on his face and his voice that makes it work. There aren't many guys, and maybe it's because you never saw him in a situation where he was delivering different type of promos, but there aren't many guys I feel like that can pull promos off that are done in this way very well, but he's one of them.
Weapons match.
Oh, God.
Kane versus Gene Snitsky.
Oh, this is, I believe, our first time seeing Gene Snitsky. For a second, I thought we had seen him in a backstage segment with Booker T and Sharmell, but that was Heidenreich.
That was Heidenreich, yes.
Who is somehow not the same person.
Not the same person, although they would partner later.
You can differentiate them because Snitsky never wore MMA gloves.
So they recap this feud. Now,
first, before we recap this feud, can I recap Gene Snitsky very succinctly?
Yes, please.
Imagine Sid Vicious with no charisma.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, I could see that, but like grosser.
If the Warlord had a back knee.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, he's Gene Snitsky. So they recap this feud. Now, we talk about how the WWE is always impressive when they recap. When they do a video recap, they do a great job not only catching you up on what happened, but getting you hyped to see this match.
Yeah, I've said before that I would be fine if the company died, but still existed as a recap video and promo video production company for other wrestling promotions.
Here they were given a challenge. The constraint being recap this feud and then get us excited about it. They failed at both of these tasks.
Yeah, this may be
not their fault.
No,
not Snitsky, pun intended.
Yes, it is the most difficult task, maybe outside of Katie Vick, that the WWE recap production team was ever tasked with. This video recap. This is the Kane. It's coming off of the Kane, Matt Hardy, Lita love triangle, whatever.
Yes, somehow Lita was coerced into marrying Kane.
But she's cool with it.
I do not understand how this happened. She was not cool with it, then she became cool with it, and then got knocked up, and Matt Hardy was mad because he thought it was his, but it turned out to be Kane's, and again, Lita, cool with it. And
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that no women were involved in the writing team for this storyline.
No talented writers were involved in the writing of this story.
That I mean, goes without saying, but
none of this makes any sense, and you can't recap it in a way. I went and looked it up. I'm like, is there an oral history somewhere of how this storyline? No. Nobody.
I'm going to read my notes because I think the brevity of this will add to the absurdity. This is the reverse, I think, of what we saw. If you're listening in linear fashion with all the craziness that ensued on that ECW TV show on last week's podcast. These are my notes. Lita says she doesn't regret her pregnancy, but she lost her baby after Snitsky hit Kane with a chair and he fell on her.
That is correct.
Screams, "It isn't my fault," then takes a lead pipe out of a baby carriage and taunts Kane for losing his baby. Lita, backstage, yells, "You killed my son." Snitsky responds by laughing. Lita slaps at him and punches him, so he throws Lita against the wall, says your husband is going to lose his match just like you lost your baby. And this is supposed to make us care about a professional wrestling battle.
This is so gross. The whole thing just makes your skin crawl. Who would find any of this entertaining? Just ridiculous. And
yeah, this is not a journey I want to go on with any of these people, and certainly not on my thing I watch to escape from real life. So
that,
from there,
yeah. So your choice, your weapon of choice here.
Well, let's not just talk about the weapon of choice. Let's talk about the presentation. As we have, I would say, a good 17 years prior to the first reference I recall from it on WWE television, 3 box-like structures in the entranceway.
Yes, one is holding a pipe, one is a steel chair, the other a chain.
Well,
now
they're not holding, they're displaying. As this was the Smithsonian. And it was to show people from centuries later, after all civilization has been wiped off the earth, and then it comes back, and you go to this museum, and it's, what was a chair, Dad? And then you see this setup, this display, and that's how how the child learns what a chair was.
So obviously, you just mentioned that Snitsky brought a pipe out of the baby carriage to beat up Kane. So between a pipe, a steel chair, and a chain, obviously the choice is the chain wins at 41%, not the pipe, but the chain.
I was having to look up the history of Nikita Koloff in Milwaukee. I'm wondering if there was some reason why they took the chain. This is not quite.
I feel these men were not prepared to have a chain match.
Oh no, they were not.
They were ready for a pipe.
They were ready for a pipe, or a chair. I thought it was going to be a chair because wrestling fans like to see people hit people with chairs. I did not expect. Really, the chain was the last thing I thought, because chair, everyone likes a chair. Lead pipe, part of the storyline. Yep. Chain, the thing that's in here to not get votes, but it gets 41% of the votes, and the in-arena crowd inexplicably was here for the chain as well. They were cheering for it.
Clean sweep for the chain. Now,
so the chain gets the vote, and then the match starts with the chain in the middle of the ring on the ground.
Yeah, the ref drops the chain in the ring between the two guys. And what does Kane do? He immediately throws the chain out of the ring and starts punching Snitsky in the corner.
Wrong. First, they have the least aggressive tug of war you've ever seen in your life. And these are two men that are legit over 6'4", 6'5", probably 280, 290, build at 325. And they have the lightest, daintiest tug of war you have ever seen in your life.
I'm super distracted by Kane's boot. Is it not tied? It was It was bothering me a ton.
It is not tied. I'm distracted by Snitsky's Snitsky. He just looks. He's so generic as far as he has. Is he a young lion? He has black boots.
No,
black trunks. He has the worst hair you've ever seen. Just no defining characteristics about him other than tall. And things aren't his fault. And we are going to have a professional wrestling match between these two men here on this pay-per-view event, meaning that part of your view was paid to see these men.
Way too much. There's a very large percentage of your pay that went to seeing these men.
Well, and if you go to not the actual time, but the feels like time, the heat index or the wind chill version of time and space, you basically paid more for this match than you paid for the pay-per-view with how long this felt.
Snitsky brings the chain in the ring, but Kane starts using it, wraps the chain around his fist, and punches Snitsky, who falls out to the floor. Snitsky pulls the chain, sending Kane into the post. Snitsky then starts whipping Kane with the chain, choking Kane with it.
This is where I note Snitsky is a poor man's warlord, and that's not a compliment.
No. Snitsky.
Then, we just have to mention this. The next move that he does, it's a chain-assisted rear chin lock. This match. So this is supposed to be this blood feud, right? And there's a weapon.
Doing holds.
They are doing like an OVW school match with a chain, but they're still doing all the same rest holds. It's the same pacing. The only thing that's notable about this match is that Snitsky is dominating, and Jim Ross is just freaking out about how we've never seen him dominated like this before. I'm like, I feel like I saw him wrestle The Undertaker.
Snitsky is dominating, but he's doing it using slow, plodding, big guy offense.
Oh, Warlord. Again, there's nothing that he does that actually looks like it hurts. And again, this guy he's as big as Kane. He's 6'4", 6'5". getting up close to 300 pounds, but everything he does just looks so weak.
Back to the chain. He's whipping Kane again. More long choking sequences.
Yeah, it's the second chain-assisted reverse chinlock in like a 4-minute span by the same man. Kane, he rallies back again, like gathering strength from the crowd, just like he was in a sleeper or something. He rallies back up, elbows out, but gets clubbed down again.
Yep, Kane sits up after a sidewalk slam. They do the spot where both men boot each other in the face.
It's the double big boot spot.
My
I
notes
here
in capital letters just say, "End this, please."
Yeah, my notes at the exact same spot say in all caps, "This match sucks." At this point, after the double big boot, Kane sits up again. Lita pulls the chain away out onto the floor. And Kane, you guessed it, tries to choke Gene.
Yes, Snitsky turns around. Kane tries a choke slam, but instead he just kind of throws Snitsky over the top. Kane then with the chain outside, but Snitsky kicked the stairs into Kane's knee.
That was the best part of this match by far.
It was, because now we're back to boring Snitsky offense. It just continues. Again, my notes say, "End this."
JR has a few, I don't know if they're good lines or unintentionally funny lines, but Gene Snitsky grabs the timekeeper's chair and Jim Ross says, with all the sincerity in the world, "That's not a weapon of choice."
Yes. So Kane, I said the same thing, Jim. We're on the same page here because Snitsky hits Kane with a chair. So I immediately said, "Oh, thank God the match is over. He's DQ'd." But no. I'm like, what the hell? This match is still going on. Snitsky has a chair. And he hits Kane again a couple more times. The ref does not care.
Jim Ross says, "Snitsky has gone into business for himself." I'm like, Jim, you know the meaning of that phrase. That's not what's going on here. But no, this crowd, tepid. This is a Greg the Hammer Valentine match sort of crowd reaction here. They are not into this. And again, that's saying something because WWE crowds love them some Kane. Always, no matter how bad he is in the ring or no matter how dumb the storylines are, crowds pop for Kane always.
So again, the ref not caring this was not the voted in weapon. He goes to Pillmanize the neck of Kane.
The ref does not, by the way. We should mention that was Gene. If the ref did it, that would be the most exciting development of this match. If he takes matters in, if he goes into business, not Gene going into business for himself, but the referee decides, "I need to end this match in the most dramatic way possible," and Pillmanizes Kane's neck, here for it.
No, unfortunately, it's Snitsky, and he goes and jumps off the ropes onto the chair. Kane is fakely bleeding from his mouth in the most comical blood capsule way possible.
It's terrible. It's like the worst local haunted house blood you've ever seen. He gets Pillmanized on the neck, as we talked about. Snitsky jumping off the second rope onto the chair, which is wrapped around Kane's neck. And then there's no blood. It's as if somebody had a button and like a gallon of blood just comes gushing out of Kane's mouth.
The reddest, fakest blood you've ever seen.
It was like it's like the equivalent of everything that was at the local blood bank in Milwaukee. All came out of his mouth, but it was so Kool-Aid-y. It was this is something that was supposed to make you shudder and fear Snitsky, and it was supposed to be this serious angle, and instead I just laughed and laughed and laughed. This wasn't quite the blood being poured from the ceiling of WCW Monday Nitro and landing several feet away from its intended target, Kevin Nash, but it wasn't far off.
No, the referee stops the match and calls out the EMT, so immediately I pop huge that the match is finally over. Snitsky gets in the ring, and the ref who waved off the match counts 3. This is the worst referee ever. Not only did he not stop the match and DQ Snitsky, he calls for a pin after waving off the match and calling in EMTs. This is horrible. It's continuing to be boring.
I think what happened here,
tend to Kane in the ring. This takes forever. I'm so mad.
What happened here is that Snitsky, because he bails, he's like halfway to the back. We don't see him, but he left the ring. I think somebody told him, I think Vince was in somebody's ear telling him, get your ass back to the ring. You're supposed to get the pin here. So he gets back in, and after the match has been thrown out, he gets the pin and then just leaves.
Oh, this takes forever here. As
it takes forever, but first, like the medical crew, they just appear in the ring almost as quickly as the blood capsule pops in Kane's mouth. But no, they're trying to load him. They're trying to take him out, put him on the gurney. I will say, Lita, she is no Miss Elizabeth when it comes to showing concern for her husband in the ring. She's
no Miss Elizabeth with Jake the Snake Roberts at this Tuesday in Texas show we were just talking about.
She really doesn't look that concerned. Like, her only concern seems to be, and I guess she's really the voice of the fans here, she's like Jesse Ventura, it's just taking too long. Like, she's not particularly upset, but she's like, come on, guys, hurry up.
Get this man to a hospital, right? So it takes forever. They get Kane on the stretcher. He's strapped to the board. He's on a stretcher going up the ramp.
Well, he's strapped to the board on a stretcher, and Jerry Lawler actually makes a great point. Why are they putting this neck brace that is compressing the front of his neck, which ostensibly is what had just been crushed, causing these gallons of blood to spew from his mouth?
I'm no doctor, but
yes, exactly. I do not work at a local medical facility, but also we should note this is one of the rare times where WWE, so this didn't look good on first showing. They then show us multiple angles in slow motion that make this look so much worse and so much more fake before we then see Kane being wheeled up the entranceway on the gurney.
Snitsky attacks him, throwing him off the stretcher. Jim Ross does his damnedest to try to make Snitsky sound like a killer here. But again, like you described earlier, he doesn't do anything with any intensity whatsoever. No. And so, like, the Taz attacking of Chris Candido on a stretcher on last week's show that we reviewed, this was not that. This was the exact opposite of that.
It was the exact opposite of it. And also think about what we talked about on that show with Taz, who's legitimately short, but everything he did was so intense and so scary. Just him even standing there made him look and feel a foot taller than he was. He looked and seemed so much more intimidating than this giant Gene Snitsky did here on this show. The one thing I will say about this, that looked like a bump that sucked for Kane.
Yes, that had to suck.
Snitsky tips this thing over. And again, Kane is strapped, arm strapped. He's got no chance to brace himself. And he falls face first.
Yes, he did.
Off this gurney onto the keyboard, such as it was on the stage. The grating, this did not look comfy.
14 minutes and 17 seconds was this
of my
match.
Life that I'll never get back. And
it felt no less than 10 years. No less than 10 years.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
It's hard to put in words how boring and bad this was. And we should know, it's like we've talked about with several things. This, even though it was only, and I say that in air quotes, 14 minutes, you could have accomplished everything that you did here in 8.
And it still would have felt like 5 years. Yeah.
Yes.
Unacceptable how hideously boring this was.
So from that, we go backstage. We get another interview with Edge. He's angry that the fans chose an old broken down guy like Shawn Michaels instead of him. He buries the fans. He completely buries the tag team titles 6 feet under.
He's like, I've done that 10 times. No thanks.
Yeah. He's not interested in that. So,
speaking of not being interested, here comes me again for this match.
So, let's recap. Since we had the opener, which was an acceptable, entertaining professional wrestling match between Shelton Benjamin and Chris Jericho, what have we had since then? We had the Women's Battle Royal, which we described earlier. We had a La Resistance promo. We then had 15 minutes of Kane versus Gene Snitsky, capped off by the terrible angle.
Oh.
We then have a brief window of entertaining with Edge. Then from there, we now go to a video package, and apparently what we learn is that Eric Bischoff's nephew was Eugene in storyline.
Yes.
I have zero recollection of this, and I remember a lot of terrible wrestling things. I have no recollection of this story, and there's good reason why as this plays out. But this match, Eric Bischoff versus Eugene, the options for this, the loser either must be the servant to the winner for 30 days, he must wear a dress for a month, or he must have his head shaved. We will not learn until after the match which of these options was selected by the fans. It's not yet the WWE Universe. It's the travelers of WWE's information superhighway.
Yes, on the worldwide internet. So Bischoff comes out in his karate gi.
Yes, his black martial arts gi. His music, the only way I can describe it is if you told someone to make the lamest possible version knockoff of Vince McMahon's No Chance in Hell, that's what this is. It is the NWO Z team of Vince McMahon music.
So this is the I'm Back song. It's
terrible.
What you might not remember this, but when he was introduced as the GM of Raw, his theme song for the night was AC/DC's Back in Black.
Absolutely.
And obviously they would not pay for that song. So they said, hey, make a lame knockoff version of Back in Black as close as we can without getting sued. And instead of coming up with something like the knockoff music that we've talked about for Tommy Dreamer, where they have a really good Man in the Box.
DDP's, WCW music.
Yeah, there's plenty of good knockoff theme songs. This is not one of them. It is a horrible
They did not get song. Even in the ballpark.
Not even close.
Not even in the zip code and the area code. This was...
So Eugene...
terrible. It made him seem like such a loser.
Eugene is Nick Dinsmore, who is another longtime OVW guy, a guy who never got the break in the big time until
got a ton of dark matches for years.
Yeah, and he was always known as a good wrestler, Nick Dinsmore, and then he got the call for this character, like a special needs character. And
it's basically it's Norman the Lunatic and early Rick Steiner combined.
Horrible. This character is no good. It was no good for Nick Dinsmore. He could never his skill was being a really good technical wrestler, so he could never do that. And
it was there was no way his career could ever be anything after this. Like his career was going to be whatever the shelf life was of this character once he got it, and he would never recover from it. Apparently, the gimmick, other than that, it's as you described. It's also that he's a wrestling savant, and so he does all these, do the George the Animal Steel thing, or he'll think he's Randy Savage, and Eric Bischoff was his abusive uncle.
So Bischoff jumps him before the bell.
Hold on, I just have to jump in here. I'm sorry. Like, look at the psychology, and I don't mean the wrestling psychology, but the human psychology of this program. We have the deaths of unborn babies being mocked. Like the death of a fetus being mocked. Like we have the situation which is not only mocking special needs, but mocking abusive family relationships. Like
Vince McMahon must have been a really fun hang.
Exactly. Like this feels like Vince Russo. Like the idea of someone being pregnant and then losing their baby tragically. And that was something that and then this, like, what are we doing here? What was this? Like, this feels even for WWE, and you talk about the Attitude Era or things that came before or after, like, this just feels weird even for them.
Bischoff lays in those kicks. Eugene fires up. Bischoff fakes a knee injury and kicks Eugene in the head. Eugene fights back. Airplane spin. He drops a leg and he does a little Hogan pose. Drops a leg. Gets a 3 count.
Yeah, you're not skipping a lot. There is nothing.
No, there's nothing here and no reason to talk about it anymore.
There's nothing here. The thing that, again, it should be noted, though, is that this is another one of those things, this heavily character-driven things that, in theory, the only reason you do this, because the wrestling is non-existent at best, the only reason you do this is because you're creating this strong bond between the wrestler and the fans, and that's what's going to carry this. Nobody cared about this in the building. This got no reaction. Like most of the things on this show, again, going back to that Kane, Gene Snitsky thing, that whole storyline of, again, Snitsky killing Lita's child got no reaction. Like, these were not things that wrestling fans were going to be hooked into to care about here in 2004, but they were damn sure going to try from the WWE side.
The entire first half of this pay-per-view is that embarrassing feeling when someone walks in the room when you're watching a wrestling show and they're like, what is this? Why do you like this crap? And then you're looking at it and going like, I don't know. I can't defend this.
I've said it before. Exactly. I've said it before that these are the type of things, and really to your point, other than the Jericho Benjamin match, this whole show so far, it is the type of wrestling show that you if you're living with your significant other, you pray that they don't walk in the room, because you know that if they do, you are going to be single shortly thereafter. There is no, like, if someone asked me, why am I watching this? I could not give them an answer. I could not give them any answer that would satisfy them enough to want to continue being involved with me as a friend, as a romantic partner, as a family member, any of those things.
59% for shaved head was the vote. Coachman comes to the ring, tries to make up the rules and say, no, you know what, you can just be Eugene's servant for 5 minutes instead.
Eric is trying. I will give Eric Bischoff that. He is doing everything he can. He is summoning every bit of Eric Bischoff that he can as a character to make this entertaining. It is a failed endeavor, but he is trying. He leaves the chair. Coach in the entranceway tells him to go back. It seems as though Coach has a plan of some sort. Eric is back in the chair. He's screaming, "I'll never forgive you, Eugene." But then the clippers don't work. So Vince starts barking at Eugene to just get the scissors and start cutting them. These huge, like, Brutus Beefcake size clippers. And I don't mean the clippers that Brutus Beefcake used. Like, these are the size of the man Brutus Beefcake. These are huge.
Yeah, so he gets his head shaved finally, eventually. Vince makes Coach strip down and put on a dress. He makes fun of Bischoff for dyeing his hair black, which Jim Ross had a good comment, like Vince doesn't dye his own hair.
Yeah, and this whole segment was just
sucked. This whole thing sucked.
It was terrible. It was Vince, getting another measure of revenge legitimately over Eric Bischoff. He won the war and then he had to keep winning the war. And this was, the same reason that Vince would book, Jim Ross to get bloodied and destroyed every time they go back to Oklahoma City. I
shut the show off here and I texted you and I said, this is the first half of the show is awful. I was waiting for you to say, let's cancel the podcast. Let's shut it down. We'll end with last week's episode and be done. We'll never watch another wrestling show again. And I would have took you up on that offer. Last week would have been our last episode. But no.
I'm always upset when you text me that, because especially for a show like this, where I know going in that WWE Taboo Tuesday 2004 is going to be a bit of a struggle motivationally for me to watch to begin with. And then when I get a message from you saying this show sucks, that's when I know this is going to have to be broken up into 6 or 7 sittings for me to be able to get through. And yeah, it took me. You sent me that text message. I think it was 2 days after that before I got up the courage, the emotional energy to start watching this show. And I still was not prepared for what this was going to be.
I poured myself a stiff drink, sat back down, and fired this bad boy up again.
See, and I'm doing this on the CM Punk plan, so imagine how I got through this. Just imagine doing this without assistance.
Edge confronts Michaels for not dropping out of the voting because he's hurt and he's selfish, and Edge is correct in his analysis.
He is. But before we get to that, I just have to mention this is the other line that gets said over and over again on the show by the announcers. Jim Ross says it as that Eugene Eric Bischoff segment is ending. And this is like modern day levels of Jim Ross saying something with no emotion behind it. It's sounding like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. He says, the fans spoke and we sure listened.
World Tag Team Championship. La Resistance defend against Edge and Chris Benoit. Benoit is announced as being from Atlanta, not Edmonton, Alberta.
Residing in Atlanta, Georgia. Like they try to get around it, just like what they said, born in Manhasset, New York with Jericho. Yeah. Like Jericho, everyone knows him as being from Winnipeg. Benoit is from Canada as well. They say residing in Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah, and it's so funny because if you're a wrestling fan, like you don't even think twice about Chris Benoit being from Canada, and why would that be a problem to begin with? But you don't think about that. But the second they say residing in Atlanta, Georgia, all you think is, no, that guy's from Canada.
Yeah, and then Edge is immediately introduced as being from Toronto. So you know right away he's a bad guy.
Yes, exactly. So we've got 3 bad guy Canadians and 1 good guy, air quotes, American here is what this is.
But he's introduced as being from the province of Quebec. And so you have basically 4 Canadians in the ring.
Yes.
And we immediately start with loud USA chants.
Yes, I know. Yes, USA chant for 2 Canadians wrestling 2 French Canadians. Very, very fitting here. This also is, you talk about sometimes how WWE booking or crutches or tropes haven't changed in 20 years. Here in 2004, what is the story here? Can these men coexist?
Can they coexist? And so it's all Edge and Benoit early, a little offense by Conway. Edge then hits a spear. All 4 men are fighting outside.
Jerry Lawler literally says, direct quote, can they coexist? I almost turned it off.
As they go back in the ring, La Resistance with some double teaming on Edge. We get a long, boring chin lock by Grenier.
How about when Edge goes to the top and then he goes to the floor, he starts jawing with a fan and Benoit has to go out and get him and bring him back in. That was very strange. I thought it was going to lead to something, but it was just a weird thing. Almost as weird as that really, really strange, rough-looking one-man flapjack.
Oh, yeah.
Benoit did
I thought Grenier was going
to
he was going to blow his arm out on that one. He landed so weird.
He did not like that, too, because he gave hard receipt chops.
Oh, yeah.
To Conway after that.
So we see Edge on the apron. Benoit goes for a hot tag, but the ref doesn't see it.
We get an X-Pac sucks chant at one point during this match, which was so random. And that tells you how engaged people were here in this match. And I can't say that I blame them because La Resistance, they are the most generic wrestlers you've ever seen in your life. Like, they are totally fine, but they do nothing interesting. They don't look interesting. They are the most generic, like, early to mid 2000s OVW graduates you'd ever see. Like, there are so many of these guys from this era that are interchangeable, and it's just like they're the distillation of the WWE style of wrestling that everybody was being taught / forced to fit into.
Edge says screw it, starts walking away. We see Edge in the back. He gets his bag and he leaves the arena, gets in a car and drives off.
Well, you're skipping so many
I am.
horribly boring rest holds, front face locks,
so boring.
Reverse chin locks. This match, when he talked earlier about wrestling school, like, there's nothing that Rob Conway and Sylvain Grenier did in this match that could not be done by somebody in their first week of wrestling school. And I'm not blaming them. They're capable, I'm sure, of doing more, but that, like, the idea that this is what people wanted to see in 2004, it's just so far off the mark. And it's not just me and my personal preferences saying that. This, like, so many things on the show in terms of the in-ring reaction, it is getting, or the in-ring action, I should say, is getting no reaction from the crowd at all. And this goes on and on and on.
Finish comes when Benoit knocks Grenier down, puts a crossface on Conway. Conway taps out. Benoit single-handedly wins the tag team titles. Him and Edge will be the tag team champions that don't get along. Benoit celebrates with both belts.
Yeah, this was no Strikeforce turn.
No.
This was no Rick Martel turning on Tito Santana. I didn't feel as I was watching this like I needed to rush into my closet and get that awesome Strikeforce t-shirt birthday present that you got for me, or Christmas present that you got for me last year. I did not need to put that on here. This did not deserve that level of praise from that t-shirt.
Triple H interview in the back. He says the internet voting is a bunch of crap. He is correct. He doesn't buy that Michaels is actually hurt. He says that he'll walk out as the World Heavyweight Champion.
The best part of this promo, and one of my favorite parts of this whole show, is after everything here that you mentioned that Triple H says, he then says to Todd Phillips Grisham, "Get out of here. I got some thinking to do." Just like that. I'm like, who is this character?
The cerebral assassin's got some thinking to do.
Just the way he said it. He sounded about as interested as Vince McMahon sounded on commentary on SummerSlam 96 several episodes ago, if you go back into the archives. We then get a recap of Shawn Michaels' injury.
His legit injury.
Yes.
And he can't stand up. He gets helped walking to the back. Yeah, he's in bad shape.
This is where I start in my mind to say, my God, this is the best selling of a leg injury I've ever seen in my life. Like, Ricky Steamboat is nothing compared to this man. We'll get to that later. But before we get there, as if the 7-woman Diva Battle Royal in special attire was not enough, we now have Christy Hemme versus Carmella in a match that will either be an aerobics challenge, a pillow fight, or an evening gown match. But before we get to the match and the voting, we get a video recap feature of how we got here. And the only thing I took away from this is that, I mentioned earlier how great Edge was at delivering WWE scripted promos. On the furthest opposite end of that spectrum is Carmella.
Correct. Carmella, she's the 2004 Playboy Playmate of the Year. Christy Hemme was the Diva Search winner. And yeah, the crowd votes for a lingerie pillow fight, forgetting what that looked like at WrestleMania 19 with the Miller Lite Catfight girls. Yes. The crowd was wrong in their vote. 57% online voted for this.
It's so bad. Coach is at the control center. He's in the dress still. He says it's apropos that he gets to introduce these two competitors. He then says that he doesn't care for either of them. Okay. But then he says they have to undress before they can redress. And oh, by the way, the dressing rooms, which are on the stage, are quote unquote see-through or opaque, really. And at that point, the next 5 minutes of this is Jerry Lawler freaking out over silhouettes.
This man has never seen something as hot as a silhouette. and so this guy watched. Yeah,
what am I watching?
This went on forever. I thought
this was
Snitsky
like the
Kane went on forever.
Yes.
No, this would not end. Just silhouettes. I'm like, the internet exists, and they're trying to get people excited about silhouettes. Got it.
I'm going to make a confession here, and it's probably not going to be the confession you're thinking as we're talking about silhouettes and the internet. I am going to make a confession. This is the first time and it will be the only time. This is the first time in the history of this podcast that I did fast forward.
Did you fast forward? Nice.
I fast forwarded, I'd say probably 2 minutes, and on the streaming service that we're using, it has the little thumbnails. And so like I did it, and I did it like single speed, thinking, well, okay, that'll get by it really quick. And then the thumbnail just kept changing and changing and changing, but it's still silhouettes. I'm like, did my streaming service break? Do I need a new Roku? What is going on? No, that was just this segment. I will never do that again, but here with what I had already been through, what I had endured already, and then what I had already spent 3 minutes hearing Jerry Lawler say, I needed to be done with this if I was not going to be done, to your point earlier, of doing
the
this
whole podcast
forever.
The randomizer almost broke me here with this show. They hit each other with pillows. There's feathers everywhere.
Well,
This
let's-
is so.
there-
Yeah, no, we're moving ahead.
No, so they get to the ring after all of this. They get introduced. They come out in the ropes. They're in the ring. There are pillows scattered around the ring as though this is the pillow match of tables, ladders, and chairs matches. There's a referee, an official. I believe it was Jack Doan in the ring. And the only thing I'm upset about fast forwarding is I feel like I may have missed some true pure sports analysis from Jim Ross during those couple minutes that I fast forwarded. I hope you can confirm that I did not miss that in the long changing session.
You did not. Jim Ross was unable to get in any words over the yelling and shrieking and screaming of Jerry the King Lawler. Feathers everywhere. This is lame. The crowd, you want to talk about not caring.
No.
This crowd was like, they hated everything about it. They were just, it was worse. They didn't hate it. It was worse. They just didn't care.
It was as if it was not even happening in front of them. That's the level of reaction. I am legitimately shocked that Chrissy Hemme did not snap an ankle in the boots that were worn, but this was terrible.
She pinned her. She got the win. Christy Hemme.
Well, there's controversy here, though. Those shoulders were up.
They
that
were.
Right shoulder was sky high.
Jack Doan, referee of the year, by just calling it, just saying this match is over.
This was at this point, this segment, and I note in my notes, I write down, this is WWE's version of a TNA weekly pay-per-view without an X Division match.
Yes.
It's that bad.
So bad.
We've had 3, actually 4. If you go back to the Battle Royal, you go to Snitsky and Kane.
Oh.
You go to Eric Bischoff and Eugene and everything that happened after that. And then you get this match. All those things happened in about an hour and a half on this same pay-per-view event.
It was relentlessly bad. It wouldn't stop being bad in my eyes. I just couldn't. I'm like, why? Why are you doing this to me?
At this point, I am convinced that this is the worst WWF show that I've ever seen. WWF/WWE. I cannot recall a worse first 90 minutes of a show from this company in my life.
World Heavyweight Championship.
I just have to reiterate, this was a pay-per-view. This is not a weekly television show where it was just a small
$40 probably at the time. Yeah, $40.
This was a pay-per-view. You had to spend additional money that you had worked for to watch this.
Versus the challenger, Shawn Michaels. Michaels can barely walk down the ramp. Both men are in the ring. They trade punches, but Michaels has to be staying in the corner so he can use the ropes to hold himself up.
Yeah, so I just have to note before they trade punches, before any of this starts, when Triple H comes out, there's a just millisecond clip of him on the Titantron knocking Kurt Angle off a stretcher. So I guess that was just a regular spot at this time in WWE.
So at this point, Jim Ross, this is my favorite thing on this show. Jim Ross loses it with Jerry the King Lawler.
Oh yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
He has done this a few times before when he's trying to call a championship match and he just has had enough of having to listen to the King all night long in his antics, and he goes off here, and I love it.
I think there was an example of this as well, maybe on the King of the Ring show that we reviewed in season 1, the Vengeance show. It was one of those where, yes, Lawler was just completely insufferable. Do you have the audio?
On the right hand, and Michaels staying right back in that corner, almost in a guard position, trying to stay protected.
Well, here's what I'm wondering is why didn't Shawn Michaels go ahead and follow up here? Is he
King, but damn it, because he's hurt. Can you think about anything but puppies and paintings and schoolgirls? The damn man is hurt, for God's sakes. Michaels fighting with everything he's got. He's using the ropes to hold himself up.
And he didn't even kick Triple H when he had the chance.
You know, I wish the hell I had an MRI in my pocket, but I don't.
Yes, our listeners just heard Jim Ross go off on King Lawler. Now,
the most justified rant by an announcer in wrestling history.
Triple H charges in. Michaels tries to kick him, but Triple H catches the injured leg, hammers down on it.
We cannot do enough justice. We cannot do proper justice to how incredible Shawn Michaels here is. And again, it maybe seems less incredible. I don't know whether it's
No,
more amazing or less amazing because he's actually hurt doing this. If he wasn't hurt, to my point earlier, it would be the greatest selling in the history of professional wrestling.
He's
Instead,
hurt.
what it is one of the most incredible gutting your way through a match moments in the history of professional wrestling. He has no MCL. He is wrestling this match almost literally just holding on to the ropes. Anytime he's upright, he is in a corner, he's up against the ropes, and he's having to steady himself by the ropes legitimately.
Yeah, no, it's a heck of a performance here because you know that he's got, you know, that knee is shot up with stuff and it's you know, it's taped up to the gills. So it probably is uncomfortable and he's got to deal with it being injured.
That it's there.
But he's selling it like he's writhing in pain here, and yeah, he does an incredible job and trying to do offense on one leg. Legit, he does a great job of doing not the Shawn Michaels moveset. Like he's trying to gut out. Basically it's all punches. He's like, I'm just throwing punches as much as I can, trying to do takedowns, trying to fight to survive here because Triple H cuts him off, starts working over the leg, and Triple H puts on the figure 4. This got one of the first reactions I've heard since the opening match.
Yes, not only first reactions from the crowd, but Shawn Michaels in this move was incredible. He's in agonizing pain, but it's not in an overly demonstrative way. It's that type of pain where you step on your kids' Legos and then you don't want them to hear you swear. So you're everything you can to not scream, but it shows how much pain you're in. That's Shawn Michaels here. He's almost convulsing. He's vocally and verbally begging the referee to not ring the bell. Do not ring it. He screams.
He's pleading.
As he's in the figure 4.
Michaels tries to push. He's not even trying to roll it over. He's trying to just push Triple H's leg off of his leg, but he can't. And then he has to start reaching, and he finally gets the ropes.
He's almost crying as he reaches the ropes, trying to alleviate or even reverse the pressure. Triple H then gets up in the referee's face, who rightfully so says, "It's my decision."
Triple H takes him to the corner, teases putting on the figure 4 around the ring post, but Michaels uses all of his leg strength to pull Triple H face first into the post. He's back in the ring, and Michaels fights back. It's short-lived. Triple H just kicks him in the leg again, and Michaels crumbles. He shoves Triple H off with his good leg, and Triple H goes into the corner, hitting his head on the post again.
This was
both men are down.
There was nowhere near there was no reason why he jumped
Leaped?
over the cleared the turnbuckle and hit the post. But he's down. Shawn gets up with punches, hits 2 inverted atomic drops, hits a third. This one hurting his own knee as it should. He still though hits an awesome clothesline, which I don't really recall Shawn hitting lariats that often, but that's what this was. Both men are down, and this is where I note that, man, even though Shawn is working his ass off here, the crowd is really, really quiet at this point still.
Yes, Shawn pulls himself up using the ropes again. Michaels with punches. He's doing an awesome job here showing how he can't stand up without the assistance of the ropes.
JR is screaming out, "This is a profile in courage."
He gets a 2 count after a big punch. Triple H, though, back to the leg, goes for the pedigree. Triple H shoves the ref out of the way, and Michaels, with the ref not looking, hits a low blow on Triple H. A DDT by Michaels. Shawn tries to go to the top rope, making the world's most epic climb up the ropes, and then drops the flying elbow, and the people are awakened into it finally.
Oh, yes. They finally realize they're at a wrestling show. Not that they're given many reasons to realize this earlier on. JR is great here saying, "Shawn, don't do it. Don't go to the top rope." After he hits the drop kick, though, and he's pulling himself up, Jim Ross is screaming about divine intervention and says that Shawn Michaels is only a super kick away. At this point, the crowd they are with it here.
He's tuning up the band, going for his sweet chin music super kick, but Batista hits the ring. Michaels knocks him off the apron. Triple H charges in, and Michaels hits the super kick. And at this moment, Edge is in the ring. Batista on the apron with the referee. Edge spears Shawn Michaels while Batista was distracting the ref. Edge just screaming, "It should have been me," as he jumps the rail and leaves again.
He doesn't even scream, "It should have been me." He, in an even more deranged way, he just screams, "Should have been me! Should have been me!" And for some reason, that just made it so much better. I don't know why, but I love that. Jim Ross is incredible here. He's screaming. He's nearly crying. He is nearly in tears, yelling
he was moved by Michael's performance here.
Yes, profile in courage, divine intervention. He's nearly crying as he says, "It can't end this way." Triple H dramatically, slowly crawls over, covers Shawn Michaels. 1, 2, and 3.
I was shocked he didn't kick out here, but 3 makes sense.
What
Still
a
the
letdown,
champion.
though.
Triple
This was
H.
like Shawn Michaels' performance was incredible, but this was such a nothing match, and then it just ended that way. Triple H goes to the back. His music is done, and then Michaels is in the ring, blowing kisses, acknowledging the crowd to a standing ovation. Jim Ross says Shawn Michaels should be leaving here with the world title. Jerry Lawler, in a rare moment of clarity, says that even he can't argue with that. This was weird, and I guess at this point it makes more sense now knowing he was actually hurt, because this was a short a send-off in some ways for a short period of time. But this felt almost like Shawn Michaels was retiring or something.
Bischoff's in the back, freshly shaven head, yelling, "What are you looking at random dudes?" One of them was Steve Keirn, the aforementioned Skinner.
There you go. Yeah, Steve Keirn, the link between Tuesday Night in Texas and Taboo Tuesday. We have it, so I'm glad here. What I'm not happy about, though, what we have here. At this point,
where I'm at, my glass of bourbon is just about done. I just watched the heavyweight championship match. I don't know what the card is going into this show, so I'm like, okay.
We've not been told about any other match.
There's no other match. So that was my main event. I'm like, what a show. And then JR and the King recap the entire show. Everything we just saw. With
highlights for 10 minutes. And again, keep in mind, at this point, we have no idea that there is or isn't another match after this. All of the matches that have been discussed, that have been mentioned, even in passing on this show, all the wrestlers that have been mentioned, we've seen them all already. So we have no reason to believe there's anything else after this World Heavyweight title match.
I'm thinking maybe we got a standby match.
Yeah, Western States Heritage title. I don't know. But basically what happens is we get a mini sports center of sorts here, hosted by Jerry the King Lawler and Jim Ross. They go through every match, including the Battle Royal, including the pillow fight, and we get highlights. And then all of a sudden, a graphic is on the screen, and it tells us that the main event is Randy Orton versus Ric Flair.
Holy crap, I did not see that coming.
No, neither of these men, their names have not been mentioned on the show. Their faces have not been seen. We had, I have to say this again, we had no inclination that anything else was going to happen on this show after the World Heavyweight title match. But instead, this graphic says, and it shows clearly, Randy Orton versus Ric Flair. It will either be a Falls Count Anywhere match, a submission match, or a steel cage match. And what do we get from here? The exact opposite of the video package recapping Kane and Gene Snitsky.
This is a perfect video package.
Oh, to this point, the best thing on this show.
Best thing on this show is
video package recapping how we got here between Randy Orton and the Nature Boy Ric Flair.
This was so good. Orton doing the legend killer gimmick. Flair saying you got to go through him. We see the Evolution breakup. We see clips of Flair and Batista and Triple H beating up on Orton.
Well, the story of this, how Orton got Flair to take this match, was basically him saying how pathetic it was to see Ric Flair carrying Triple H's bags and doing Triple H's bidding. And basically, he's not the Nature Boy anymore. And Flair flips out. He says, "I'm the man. I invented being the man," which is just the best line ever. And
it's true.
unsurprisingly, yes, well, it is. And unsurprisingly, this crowd in attendance and 68% of the internet fans wanted this to be a steel cage match. That's what it is. And magically, instantaneously, we see a cage and the cage starts to lower.
Yeah, and this was super exciting because we had just if you go back and listen to part 1 and 2 of the WrestleMania 19 review in 2003, season 1, 2003, WrestleMania 19, we were talking about what a performer Ric Flair was outside the ring as Triple H's manager. He was the best worker on the show until the main event. And
he did not wrestle a match, and he was still a better performer than everyone else on that show.
So great, and we demanded what a waste he wasn't wrestling. And here he is wrestling, and he's in the main event. And I looked it up and doing some research. According to Dave Meltzer, the Wrestling Observer newsletter, with the exception of Royal Rumbles, this match against Randy Orton was the first time Ric Flair had ever been in the anchor position of a WWE pay-per-view. And it was the first time he had ever done a cage match in WWE.
Insane. Like, you have Ric Flair and you've never had him main event a pay-per-view in something other than a Royal Rumble. That is mind-boggling, but also in a weird way not surprising at all.
It was also his first pay-per-view main event since March 19th, 2000, when he put over Hulk Hogan in a strap match.
Wow.
So we're in a steel cage.
Well, we're not in a steel cage yet because the cage is still coming down as they're coming out. What is this knockoff Ric Flair music? Oh,
so that is
disgusting.
that is his original when he debuted in 1992.
Yes, his WWF
91, 92 there. That was his
champion.
That was his WWF knockoff version. He didn't have 2001 when he Space Odyssey music when he started.
Well, they could have rectified that though. There's no reason to use this lame knockoff.
No, they could have put in the right. They could have put in the right one for the network. Yeah, and
I'm not even talking for the network. For 2004, they could have done that. There's no reason for them not to do that.
100%.
It's the only thing more egregious than WWE not using Goldberg's music back then.
So in the ring, Flair and Orton. Flair chopped.
Before Orton gets in, I'm sorry. I know I'm slowing us down here. Randy Orton, his I Hear Voices in My Head entrance music. One of the best modern entrance theme songs. One of the more memorable ones in a sea of just not memorable theme songs. Here, this music is, hey, nothing you can say. It is. I felt wild and young here. I felt like we were about to watch NXT.
A lot of wild and young vibes. Yeah.
So bad. Wow, this is not main eventer music at all for Randy Orton. Sorry, go ahead.
No, significant upgrade in his theme later on in life, for sure.
Ric Flair is in incredible shape here for 2004. We'll get into the match, but just visually, he looks great.
Oh my gosh, like $1 million here. Yeah, Flair chopping away. Orton punches back and forth. As much as Snitsky and Kane did not feel like a fight and should have, this is how you do a fight. And these guys were going at it.
Flair in particular, every single person that wrestled on this show, with maybe the exception of Eric Bischoff, if you could call what he did wrestling, every single person on this show was considerably younger than Ric Flair. They should all be embarrassed, ashamed by the level of energy and effort that they put out in comparison to Ric Flair in this match. Ric Flair was a man possessed here in 2004 in this cage match with Randy Orton. He was moving. He was intense. He was Ric Flair. It was incredible.
It was so great. Flair, after a big backdrop, teases climbing out. Orton chases him. Flair goes right to the eyes and starts beating down Orton. Then he hits a low blow. And Orton goes face first into the cage, and he's bleeding already. And
We
we're
get
into
blood in a WWE steel cage match in 2004. I did not expect that at all, but I was happy. I hate when you do these blood feud steel cage matches. You throw guys into a cage and then nothing happens. I don't need blood in every single match, but this is exactly the type of match that you need blood in.
Punches to the cut by Flair, busted it all. He's got blood all over his knuckles. This is great. Into the cage again.
He apparently submitted Chris Jericho on Raw the night before. Why is he not getting the Intercontinental title shot here on this show? Why is he not number 16? I don't know.
Into the cage again. He's just grinding the face of Orton against the cage. Looked absolutely brutal.
Like, I feel like Ric Flair watched War Games 92 and was sad that he was not in that match, that he had left WCW for WWF, and he wanted to inject just a little bit of that energy here in this match.
It's all Flair here. He licks the blood off his hands and then punches Orton again. They trade shots, and then Flair gets sent into the cage. He gets cut, and Orton with tough shots to bust that cut open on Flair.
This may have been the last double blood, double juice match in WWF that I can remember, like in terms of it being planned.
Yeah, both men bleeding everywhere. They're both on the top rope. Orton rams Flair's head into the pipe at the top of the cage, and then Flair's ass is hanging out, and then he ends up crotching himself on the top rope.
Yeah, this is Flair. He knows he's got about 12, 14 minutes here, and this is a Ric Flair tour de force. He's playing the hits, but he's playing the hits with as much intensity as he played the hits in the 80s. Like, he is everything you mentioned about him not getting main events, him never having a cage match in WWE before, all those things, you can feel all that pent up energy and desire to be able to be Ric Flair in the Ric Flair spot on a show. He is letting all of that out here at Taboo Tuesday.
10 punch in the corner by Orton. He tries to climb out, and Flair just punches Orton in the balls.
Well, he stands on the top rope, and first he kicks Flair several times, and then, Flair just low blows him, stops Orton. More chops from Flair. Orton hits a punch, knocks Flair down, mounts him with punches, and again, Orton is bloody, so his blood is falling all over Flair as he's punching him. Flair's a mess as well.
He's choking Flair.
This looks like wrestling to me. I love it.
This is great. Randy rakes Flair's face across the cage, and Flair selling this is absolutely incredible. His face is just pressed against the cage. He's screaming at the top of his lungs, blood everywhere. Flair's between the ropes and the cage, and Orton hits a drop kick. Flair has nowhere to go, no give.
Yeah, sending Flair back first into the cage. That was pretty cool. Flair from this, though, goes up top. Orton catches him, as happens in every Ric Flair match, hits him with the press slam. This is where I note Orton is still bleeding. Like, this cut has not closed. He's bleeding like crazy. He goes to the top rope, hits a big crossbody. It looks painful as hell. Flair kicks out at 2. Orton's still on the offense.
So, Flair with some chops. He's going for the door, but Orton caught him. Flair screams as Orton hits him in the head. And then
Flair screams, "Oh, my leg, God damn it." As Flair is grabbing his leg, trying to pull him back in. Just classic Ric Flair.
Flair pulls out brass knuckles and punches Orton with them, and he gets a 2.999 count.
Yes.
And absolutely amazing near fall.
For some reason, as this near fall is happening, Jim Ross is screaming about Jimmy Kimmel for some reason.
Flair again tries to escape through the door. He grabs a chair that was on the floor and pulls it into the cage as he's pulled back in. Flair misses the chair shot. Orton hits the RKO and gets the 3 count. What a fun, bloody match. Flair, after the match, extends his hand to Orton. They shake hands. Orton hugs him. They raise Flair's hand as well as the show goes off the air.
Well, it goes off the air with Orton raising Flair's hands and Flair just this stare at Randy Orton. Even before that, Flair is so incredible, bloody. He gets up screaming. He's screaming, "Hey, hey," trying to get Orton's attention. Puts his hand out, almost collapses, and then gets back up and shakes hands. Nobody knows what to make of this. The crowd's booing. You can tell Lawler and Jim Ross don't know what to make of this, but all you have to do is look in the ring and you can just see in Flair's eyes how much this match and that 15 minutes and being in there with Randy Orton in that spot, how much that meant to Ric Flair.
And he delivered. And thank God for Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels for saving the show, saving this podcast.
Yes.
It's unbelievable. Wow. Just if that main event wasn't on here, if that show ended with the recap of JR and King, I don't know. This would have been the worst show. Would have been the worst show in history. But
it would have been the worst show that we had watched for this podcast, because even
100%.
the most egregiously terrible TNA or WCW shows at least had one really good cruiserweight X Division style match. There's something to hang your hat on. Up until the Flair Orton match, there was nothing. Yes, you had the performance from Michaels, which was incredible and you could respect, but the match was nothing at all.
Yeah, no, and so these two guys were just carried the entire company through one of the worst shows, and because of that main event, people don't think of this show as being one of the worst shows of all time. Yeah. Like in some ways,
we should be mad. We should be mad at Ric Flair.
I can't be mad at that.
No, but because without him, this show would be rightfully lambasted for being as terrible as it was. But because of Ric Flair and his performance here, and Shawn Michaels, as you said as well, is remembered for something else. I don't think there's any question. The best thing on this show was the cage match. The best match on the show was the cage match. The two best performances were Ric Flair in this match, as you mentioned, Shawn Michaels in the previous match. There is nothing else redeeming on this entire show, with the exception of a solid professional wrestling opener between Chris Jericho and Shelton Benjamin, but nothing that you need to go out of your way, nothing that you didn't see on every single episode of Raw or SmackDown in terms of quality level at this time period.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Always
the worst thing on the show. You have to pick
all of it.
You have to pick
all of it.
Worst thing.
It's all of it.
You have to pick a worst thing.
The worst thing was the silhouettes for 10 minutes, or the entire Snitsky and Kane start to finish. Those two things are horrendous.
The Snitsky Kane video recap.
Oh, the whole thing. The whole thing.
There's at least 10 things that you could put up there with it for sure.
Oh, just so angry. Interact with the show at Wrestle at Random on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/WrestlingAtRandom. All the links to subscribe to the bonus content where we do extra show every single week. You can be the randomizer. You could have picked this show for us if you hated us. You could go do that at the Patreon as well, patreon.com/WrestlingAtRandom. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy. Sometimes these shows of podcasts reviewing terrible shows, they end up going longer than some of the best shows because there is so much that we have to tell you about, and this is certainly one of those.
And we want to thank everyone for listening. We'll talk to you again next time.